when you give people with disabilities the opportunities, we've been put on a back burner so much, it's like an honor for us to go to work. My coworkers would call me in the morning to see if I was coming to work because it was a blizzard outside. I would deliberately go to work in a blizzard just because I want them to see that I go that extra mile. I did it to motivate the people that was walking, to let them know, stop making excuses, because I don't live by excuses. So if it's a blizzard, I'm showing up.
So welcome to The Nugget, the show where we interview amazing and dynamic individuals and the nuggets they have to share from their journey that can help us to achieve our goals and our vision. I am your host, Joannès, and that is 2 syllables, Joie and Ness.
Hey, I'm your co-host, Kara.
And I'm your co-host, JP, your resident internet meme addict. I love memes, man.
Today we have the amazing pleasure of welcoming to our show Mr. Jeff Williams. If you don't know him, you definitely will. Mr. Williams is a motivational speaker, real estate broker, certified pilot, apparel designer, and. We couldn't put too many ands. He's accomplished so much. He's been featured in the New York Times, AM News, and Wired Magazine, with appearances on CNN, New York One, and ABC. He's also the author of the book My Feet Are Off the Ground, which chronicles his journey and determination after being tragically shot and becoming paralyzed from the waist down, ultimately finding the strength to succeed against all odds and turning his tragedy into triumph. Welcome to our show, Mr. Jeff Williams. Jeff, it is an honor to have you.
Thank you.
I'm going to pound you up.
All right, a pleasure to be here.
I know they can't get to that. I'll take it for you guys. Man, we've had a chance to be blessed by your book and all the different teachings that we've gotten from it and your journey. There's a pivotal moment in your life where things changed.
Yes.
Which resulted with you becoming paralyzed. But take us to who is Jeff prior to the first 12 years of your life?
Before this tragic accident at 13 years old, I was that typical kid that would get up in the morning. I was very outgoing. I wake up in the morning, do my chores because I love being outside. I love adventure. I wanted to play. I wanted to play basketball.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Harlem on 149th Street between 7th and 8th. And then I moved to the Bronx and Highbridge section of the Bronx. But even though everybody think I'm a native New Yorker, I was actually born in Ahoskie, North Carolina, a little small town. You know, growing up down there, I learned more like church traditions. It was mandatory that I go to church, so I think that's where my faith started. Just being there and seeing the difference between the children there and the children in New York, where when I came to New York, church wasn't mandatory, so they didn't have that same faith upbringing in the church that the kids down there did. I kind of had that mix between this country life and this New York life.
You were like your normal, teenager.
Yes, definitely.
Young child, teenager. But something happens at the age of 12. Take me back to the night of your accident on June 25th, 1982.
So June 25th was the last day of school. I was looking forward to the summer and, going away on vacations and stuff like that, and just being outside and not having to get up in the morning to go to school. That particular morning, as usual, I would get up. I had my clothes ready, a fresh pair of sneakers. It was the last day of school, so I had my little outfit together. I remember leaving that morning, so I told my brother I'd meet him at school, because my brother was a year apart from me. He's my older brother, but we had a lot of conflict because we were so close in age. So that morning, he always would get to school late. So I wanted to get there early before we actually had to be in class so I could play in the yard and run around and be with my friends. And that particular morning was no different than any other morning. I had no warnings of no danger or nothing like that. We got out of school early that day, and my friend, he said to me, when you get out of school, because he didn't go to the school, he was like, we could, he had a new bike that we could go ride. So when I got out of school, he was there. We ended up walking maybe 4 or 5 blocks to his house. I told my brother I'm going to go with him to get the bike. My brother said, well, I'm going to go with you. I said, I wasn't sure if he had an extra bike for my brother, but I just figured, well, if he don't, you could ride with me or we'll take turns riding. I pretty much shared everything with my brother and my friend. So when we got to his house, he asked me if I wanted something to eat, and he went in the kitchen to get the food. When he came back, he had a gun with him. So he started showing me the gun, and immediately my brother's like, stop playing with, like, why you brought the gun out? Don't play with the gun with him. And my brother, from the time he came out with the gun, just insisted, like, this is wrong, let's don't do this, put the gun up. So I was sitting on the couch, and he was standing maybe a couple of feet away from me. And I told my brother, don't worry about it, the gun ain't real. I said, he just playing, the gun ain't real. So I said, let me see the gun. So when he gave me the gun, from the weight of the gun and the metal, I realized the gun was real. But me being that adventurous kid that I was, I felt like I was invincible. I used to watch superhero cartoons, and I just felt like, I would watch cowboys and Indians and different shows on TV, where they would play with guns, people get shot, and, you fall out, you hear all the noise. So I was fascinated with the gangster movies that I used to watch, and having that gun in my hand, it just made me feel like I was one of those TV characters, like this gangster. And I was pretty excited about the gun, so I kept telling my brother, like, don't worry about it. So I gave the gun back to my friend, and he kind of had that same sentiment where, he was all excited about this gun. So me and him seemed to be like in this playful mode of excitement over this gun. He pointed the gun at me again, and then he pulled the trigger, and the gun clicked. I was that kid where, you have somebody like, I dare you to do this. I was up for whatever the challenge was. So I had no fear for some reason. The gun didn't scare me. I had no fear. So he clicked the gun again, and I heard the explosion. When I heard the explosion, I saw a ball of fire coming out the gun. So I grabbed my head, and the bullet went under my arm. So my arm fell, and I fell back on the couch. I had no idea that I was actually shot. I just felt funny, like my body felt numb. All of a sudden, my legs start feeling like that tingling feeling when they go to sleep. So I start hitting my legs, and I'm like, wait a minute. So I went to get up, and I couldn't move. I looked at my friend. I said, you shot me. But he had dropped the gun when the gun went off because it scared him. And he looked, and he was like, Jeff, stop playing, stop playing. We in the house, we have a gun. I need to get out of here so we don't get arrested for the gun. And I'm thinking, like, I got to get to the hospital. So I'm looking around, but I don't see no blood. So I'm thinking, why do I feel like I got shot, but I don't see no blood? And then I'm thinking back to TV, like, I ain't fall out. I'm not screaming. There's no pain. I'm like, I don't really understand what's going on. So I had like this blank moment for a minute, but then I started losing my breath. I couldn't breathe. So I'm like, wait a minute. So then I said, look, I got to go to the hospital. Get me out of here. You shot me. And he's like, he runs over and grabbed me off the couch. And then my brother's standing there like in a daze, like he's just traumatized by what's going on. So when he picked me up off the couch, one of my sneakers fell off. So I remember telling my brother, pick my sneaker up while he was carrying me out the door. So my brother said, he just was like, okay, but he was like out of it. Like he's just like, wait a minute, like he's going through some type of changes or whatever. So he ended up getting my sneakers. So we was on a 5th floor building. I really didn't have time to wait for the elevator because I felt like I just was losing my breath. It was getting harder and harder to breathe. And what was happening, both of my lungs had collapsing because the blood was bleeding, and I was bleeding internally. The blood was going inside. So we made it to the street, and I remember stopping a cab, but now he's kind of struggling because he'd been carrying me down these 5 flights of stairs. So the cab driver wouldn't let me get in the car because he was holding me. So I asked the cab driver, he said, what happened to you? I said, I broke my leg, because I felt like if I said I got shot, he wasn't going to let me in the car. So he eventually let me in the cab. So I'm in the middle, and my brother and my friend is on both sides of me. So I passed out, and I remember him hitting me like, no, Jeff, wake up, wake up. So my friend is like, please don't tell on me, please don't tell on me. And I'm going in and out of conscious, and I'm like, I'm not going to tell. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to tell. We came up with this story where he's like, look, just say we was outside, somebody was shooting, and you got hit. So that was the story we were sticking to. When I got to Lincoln Hospital at the emergency door, I passed out. And I remember him carrying me to the stretcher, and I saw the doctors running to the door, and I blinked out. When I woke up again, I was like sitting in the recovery room in the OR, and I saw like all the lights from the operating room. I heard my mother, and she was walking. She walked past the door, and when she walked past the door, because somebody had called her and told her I got sick at school, she walked past the door, but they had my arm up, and she could see the bullet hole.
Wow.
So when she walked past the door, she came back, and I heard her scream, somebody shot my son. I just closed my eyes, act like I was asleep, because I was like, I didn't really want to answer the questions, and I knew they was coming, so I felt like, I don't want to talk about it. So the detective came in the room and asked me, did I know who shot me? And I gave him the story that somebody was coming down the street, they was shooting, and I got hit. And my brother told the same story, and I think either my brother or my friend said that I was in the building. So the detectives told my mother, this guy shot him. They gave us a description. We looking for the guy, but I think one of them shot him. So my mother said they couldn't have shot him because that's his brother and that's his friend. And the detective said, the way they acted, and I really think one of them did it. And she's like, give me a minute. So she went and talked to my brother, and she basically just grabbed my brother and said, listen, I don't care about no code of the streets. Tell me who shot Jeff. And my brother said he did it. She just walked away from him because...
He meaning your friend.
My friend,
Right.
yeah.
That shot you, yeah.
She pretty much looked at my friend and just walked away from him because, when I asked her later, she just said, what could I really do? You're a kid, he's a kid. She really didn't have no response for him at the moment, so she came back to check on me, see if I was okay. That's basically how that started.
Jeff, thank you for recounting that for us. I always think about children. As I mentioned to you a moment ago, I'm a teacher. So, I'm around kids who are, playful. Of course, our country is dealing with a ton regarding gun violence and gun ownership and gun responsibility. So with that said, what would you say that gun owners should teach or say to their children?
I'm glad you asked that question. I do a lot of motivational speakings at schools, and I talk to a lot of the teachers and the students about it. But one of the issues that I try to raise with this whole gun control and gun violence is people are under the assumption that if a gun is registered, it's in the proper hands. The gun I was shot with was registered. So I bring that point to the table because even police officer kids get shot with their guns. And when you ask yourself, a police officer is probably the most responsible person who handles a gun.
Right.
They're not even handling that gun in the proper manner if this kid seems to be able to get a hold of it. I met so many parents who lost their kids to a registered gun. I can't even count the number of illegal guns that, like when you have a baby in a stroller who never even seen a gun, never even at an age where they can understand what a gun is, get shot as an innocent bystander. Those are the things that trouble me with this whole gun violence and, people saying, well, I have a gun and I'm responsible. The gun don't kill people, people kill people. These guns that are legally obtained, if you lose the gun, if you have the gun in your car and someone breaks in the car, that gun gets on the street. So now this gun started out in all the right hands, but it ended up in the wrong hands. And then when you look at these, like the situation in Texas where 19 people were shot, it doesn't matter where that gun came from. So I'm starting to question, what's the purpose of making a gun that shoot that many rounds of bullets? Because I understand, like, coming from the South and living in New York, in North Carolina, people got guns for their birthdays. A lot of the kids go hunting, so it's like a sport, and that's the reason why there's such a big argument between do we have the gun or don't we have the gun, and people feeling like it's a good use to protect yourself in your home. But I just feel like it's too many incidents, too many times the gun goes to the wrong hands, that at some point we have to weigh the options and say, listen, do we lose 19 lives? Because one is too many. So when I'm at 19, I want to reconsider everything on the table when it comes to guns.
It's already dangerous with
Yes.
just one shot, right?
Exactly.
The way you described that day, it seems like that was a revolver.
Yes.
So you're looking at gun safety measures and how they're fighting it today, and it was just as dangerous way back then.
Exactly.
Yeah. From your book, you share just the amount of things you were processing at that time
Yes.
and trying to come to the realization that you may be paralyzed for the rest of your life. When did it really dawn on you that you may never walk again?
That's a great question. That question is great to me because the day I got shot, when I got to the hospital and the doctors finally came in to talk to me about what had happened and where we are, they were so vague because I asked them when they came in why I can't move my legs. And the doctor's response at that moment was, don't worry about it. You're going to be all right. Right now, we are trying to stabilize you. Both of your lungs collapsed. We did everything we could to stabilize you. As far as you walking, the bullet is lodged on your spine and it's touching a nerve. So that's the reason why you can't walk. In my mind, the way I translated that conversation, because the doctors didn't seem alarmed, my mother seemed calm, and she's not an emotional person and neither am I. So her being calm kind of made me feel like it's bad, but it's not too bad. Translation I got from that doctor was, when I finally go to surgery and they remove this bullet off my nerve on my spine, then I'm going to walk out this hospital. I kind of went into a mode of, I was this superhero, like I got shot and I'm still here, so I took the bullet. Kind of in my mind, that's what I was thinking. And as days went on, and maybe a week went by, and I'm still laying here, and not only can I walk, but now I can't sit up. And I'm trying to figure out, like, wow, maybe this is a lot worse than I think. So I'm asking my mother, like, well, I still can't walk. And day after day, I would get that same answer. Well, Jeff, it's early. They're going to take the bullet out, and you should be okay. And I think the doctors, my mother, my family, everybody was like, keep that a secret. Don't really let him know what's going on. And I think at that moment, it was more like trying to make sure I'm going to live opposed to me walking. And I think my mother was so happy because some years before that, I had lost my brother. And, he had passed away from a blood disorder at 6 months old. So me watching my mother go through that, say 5-7 years later, I get shot. And it's like, in her mind, I just want my son alive. I don't care what the condition is. That went on. And maybe 3 months later, the doctor comes in and tells my mother, like, I need to talk to you in the hallway. So her and my brother goes out in the hallway. And so for that whole 3 months, I'm in the hospital. I'm fine. I'm more uncomfortable with the fact I can't get up and go. But I'm dealing with the fact that eventually I will. So
And you're 13 years
yeah,
old. That's
so
right,
I'm
right?
sad some days. I'm okay some days, but I'm not. I can't walk yet. That mindset is not there. 3 months later, when the doctor walked them in the hallway and they came back in the room, the look on my mother's face and my brother, it looked like they just was broken inside. Me and my brother were so close, and my mother, that when I looked at them, I could just see whatever the doctor said to them was like over the top tragic, to the point where I asked them, where am I going to live? And they said, yeah, you're going to live. And my mother walked out the room. And my brother, it was like he couldn't even look at me. And then I said to him, just tell me what they said. I really need to know the truth. And he looked at me and said, you don't want to know what he said. And I said, I really need to know that. So my brother said to me, they said you have a 1% chance to walk again. Like, you're not going to walk no more. And he just put his head down and just waited for me to respond to it. But I think at that moment, I was so shattered and hurt. I couldn't cry. I couldn't respond to it. I couldn't even digest what he just said to me, because I'm thinking at that moment, I've been laying here 3 months. I can't get out the bed. I can't sit up, basically looking at the ceiling and looking left to right. And I'm trying to figure out, how do I put this back in my life? How do I live like this? How do I, I don't really want to do another day of this. And now you telling me, I'm thinking I already did 3 months and I'm doing good. You know, I ain't break down yet. I'm holding up strong, and I'm being as strong and hopeful and positive as I can be. But I'm like, 3 more months of this, you know. And when they left that night, I probably cried that night to the next 30 days, the rest of that month. And that took me into like the 4th month. One night my mother was sitting there and I would cry all day, like just all day long. And my mother was sitting there and she said to me, Jeff, like, you gotta stop crying. Like, you gotta like move on. And I'm trying to say, like, move on how? Like, you know, and I think at that point there was anger, there was like disappointment, like I'm feeling like, what did I do in life that this is the result of this?
Did you feel
know?
any guilt as well?
Yeah,
Or-
I felt.
What were the emotions like, Jason?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
what were the emotions
my
that you were
mother
processing at that
said
time?
something to me that kind of hit home with me, because I was blaming everything around me. I was blaming like, why me? And my mother said, listen, if you would have came home like I told you that day, because I was supposed to go home and meet the guy to bring the delivery people to bring the furniture. And as usual, regular kid, I didn't listen. I did what I wanted to do. And she said, Jeff, listen, you're the reason why you're in this chair, in this situation. You didn't come home. You played with the gun, and this is what happened. I think at that moment, she made me realize I have to hold myself accountable for my situation. And
Accountability.
I think looking back, as hurtful as it was when she said that to me, that tough love is what made me who I am today. As much as we go through things in life and we want to point fingers and blame other people, at the end of the day, we are the result of all our decisions. And I made that decision to go to my friend's house. I made that decision to let him play with me with that gun. For the rest of my life, I held myself accountable. So I decided that, you know, it's something that I have to deal with. I remember this little girl came in a room one day. I was crying, and she said to me, you know, when you think you have it bad, somebody else have it worse. And I think that statement that she said to me, I thought about it so much that night that I stopped crying. And I think I stopped crying because I realized I'm in this wheelchair. I'm paralyzed. And I looked around this hospital. There's so many people that had worse situations, and they was dealing with it. They was living with it. So I felt like at this point, I got to learn how to deal with this. I had like several operations. So I remember I went to have an operation. When I came out of recovery, I was laying in the bed on the stretcher, and this guy next to me, his name was Abdul, he said to me, why are you crying? Because tears was running out my eyes. I really didn't want to talk, so I'm like, what you mean? Why? I couldn't even understand the question, because I'm saying I can't walk, so that's why I'm crying. I can't move my legs. And he looked at me and smiled, and it annoyed me so bad because I'm feeling like, why is he smiling? Like, what's funny about this? So he asked me, can you see your legs? And I'm thinking, like, at first I was so annoyed with him when I really thought about what he asked me. And I'm like, yeah, I could see my legs. So he snatched the sheet off of him, and both his legs was gone. He had got hit by a train, and it electrocuted both his legs. Metro North train hit him in the Bronx on 161st Street. And I didn't even really know what to say to him when I looked. Me looking at his legs missing, and me thinking about what the little girl said to me that was 7, I think at that point in my life, nothing bothered me after that. You know, because it was almost like it was God's way of saying to me, take what you have and be satisfied, because it could be so much worse. Just gave me that vision, and it was like that light at the end of the tunnel for me.
And what did forgiveness look like? Or are you still in that process? I mean, we're talking about you being shot by your friend,
Right.
right? It wasn't a ricochet. It wasn't, gang related.
Right.
And you had this feeling of being fearless, which, in looking at your resume, you still are,
Thank you.
right? What did or what does forgiveness look like for you, starting with your once friend?
I love that question, and the reason why I love that question, as a motivational speaker, I did a speaking engagement, and I separated the room because I asked the question, how many of y'all will forgive your friend for shooting you? I had maybe 5 people on the other side of that room that said they would forgive their friend. The rest of that place, everybody in there said they would not. For me, and what I explained to them was this. I said, I'm gonna ask y'all a question to see if I can get y'all to move back to the other side of that room, because it bothers me that we live in a world where you should have faith and you should believe in God, and not one person can find it in their hearts to forgive somebody for what they do to them. And the sad part is, I know there's people in that room that haven't forgiven people for less reasons for that. So for me, I think forgiveness is one of the most powerful skills you could have, because it comes from your soul, it comes from faith, it comes from believing in God. I felt like for God to give me a second chance at life, he blessed me. So I needed to take that blessing and bless somebody else. So I felt like if I don't forgive my friend, this can go so many different ways, because the day I got shot, one of the conversations I had with my family was revenge. What are we going to do about this? And that's just a reality. But looking back, I was so glad that I think had my mother pushed the button to say, let's do the revenge, everything would have went a whole different direction. I think it was not only a great thing for me to do, but to see that my whole family forgave him. And my mother treats him like her son.
Wow.
So when I have Thanksgiving and he's sitting at that dinner table, I look not only at him and the fact that I forgave him, it makes me look at the character of my family and say, wow, I come from a good place. You know, I have good people behind me. And living in New York and having resources to revenge, when you grow up in the streets, you have friends that are willing to do that. Just being 13 to be able to forgive somebody to that level. You know, when I speak and people always ask, what happened to your friend? And I say, he's still my friend, and they face change. It's like, how can he still be your friend? You know, and one of the chapters in the book, which was really one of the most interesting chapters that I wrote, was answering that question and explaining in a group of people when I was at my house in the book, where I had a party and my friend showed up, and a couple of my friends said to me, like, why you didn't kill him? Why is he here? Like, how do you even talk to him?
Especially back then.
Exactly. I said to my friend, it's not always what somebody do to you, right? And one of the other things that I look at with this forgiveness, that when I look back that I'm so happy I forgave him, is because I go through life and we all make mistakes. And I don't think, had I not been shot and I had to live in a wheelchair and face that journey, that I would be touching the lives that I have touched being disabled. So as much as I want to walk, I don't feel like I can't guarantee that I would be the person that I am now. So I embrace the fact that I had this journey. I really appreciate having to go through this so I could see clear to where my purpose of life was.
I'm glad you clarified that, because one of my questions was going to be, if you hadn't gone through this, would you have gotten as involved in all of these different activities and business endeavors? Because it seemed like outside of that, you still had that influence from your family.
Right.
You know, you got a hustler's family, you know?
Yeah.
Your mother's powerhouse.
Yeah.
Right? And so do you think that part of you would have still been active in your life?
I will say this. Before my accident, and this is something from my friends, my family, I was always that person that loved helping people. So that part of my life, I feel like I would have always helped people. I was always outgoing. I was always a hustler. I was always productive. I was that honor roll student. But at the same time, even though I was a leader and I played leadership roles growing up in my life and around my friends, I still feel like there were so many distractions that it's possible I could have ended up on the other side, right? And the reason why I say that is because life challenges you in so many different ways. The street challenged you in so many different ways. I grew up with most of the people that's on America Gangster now, being in Harlem and things like that. I was a little kid. They was older, but I was always surrounded around that lifestyle.
Right.
You know, and seeing the Mercedes and the BMWs and nice cars, those was things I always wanted. At the time, when you're trying to figure out, how do I get that? Do I go the easy way and sell drugs, or do I go to work? Do I go to school? and struggle to get it. You know, your vision is cloudy when you surrounded by money and all these things, all this material things that distract you from your vision. Being in a wheelchair made me realize little things like just being able to get up and walk to the refrigerator, little things like being able to go get your own glass of water. You know, laying in that bed humbled me to the point where I laid there for 9 months. I can't even go to the bathroom there. You know, I have to wait for a nurse to come change my bed if I use the bathroom on myself, if I'm peeing on myself. So, like, to be humbled to that, you know, what you wearing and what you driving is not important to me. You know, what's important to me is the basic activities of life. You know, just being able to sit up. I learned that that's like a privilege. Being able to walk, take a step is a privilege. When I did that rewalk, it's like that robotic suit. It's called the rewalk. When I first took my first step, I was maybe 35 years old. And I took a step in that suit. And with that suit on, I was able to walk around the hospital. Having my son sit there and watch me walk for the first time, because when I had my son, he was my legs. You know, I got to see me walking again. When I actually took those first steps, and I remember my son saying to me, "Dad, I don't really know you like this." Like, he only knew me in a wheelchair. So he's like, "I like you the way you are," you know? So that kind of made me feel good. But at the same time, when I went to do that trial, the criteria for that trial, the requirements was like you had to be injured 2 years for your body to be in shape, your ankles to be able to go in 90-degree angles, because a lot of times people aren't in shape. So what I've been doing, because even though June 25th will make 40 years that I've been in a wheelchair, I exercise every day. I bought an electric bike so it pedals for me, so my muscles won't collapse. And
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I see.
So I have the electric bike. I have a standing frame, so blood circulation, things like that. So when I went to the trial and they had my age, because I'm 53 years old now, and I did that trial, I was maybe 45. And they said, "We've never had nobody your age that's in shape enough to do this." The first time when I put that suit on, it was probably one of the hardest things I ever did. I don't really live for me anymore. I think about all the people that don't get the opportunities that I get. And during that trial, one of the kids that didn't make it said to me, "I'm happy that you made it." So when I got in that suit, as hard as it was, I fought to do it because it wasn't for me. It was for everybody that couldn't get the opportunity to do it. When I got up and took those steps, before my grandmother passed, I told her, she said to me, "Jeff, you're gonna walk again." And in my mind, I know that one day I am gonna walk again. And out of all the things that I have accomplished, that's definitely on that bucket list. And I tell all the viewers and anybody, don't ever let nobody tell you what you won't do. I still believe that I will walk one day. And like my mother told the doctor, when he walks, I'm gonna tell him, "Come back and see you."
Yeah.
And that's my goal.
I mean, and how you talk about that suit, you sound like Iron Man right now.
Yeah, exactly. It felt like
You
that.
know?
In the pictures, you look like Iron Man.
Right. I mean, the next step is space, right?
Yeah,
You're going to be
exactly.
an astronaut.
I wouldn't mind. I'll try it.
Talk about your rebirth and the things you've been able to do and what has driven you. Flying a plane, riding a motorcycle. I mean, there's things, you make me feel lazy. I think when we read your resume, right,
Yeah.
it didn't say someone paralyzed, right? It's just like, it's just an added thing if you didn't know that he was paralyzed. Like,
Right.
what is it that drives you like that?
When I laid in the hospital and realized all the things I couldn't do, when I first got shot, thinking about all the things I should have did, could have did, you know, you have these afterthoughts like, I should have did this, I should have did that. When I got the opportunity again to get back in control of what I could do, I never thought about nothing I can't do. And I had so many people indirectly that I felt didn't believe that I would ever get back up and get back to what they consider a normal life. I looked at the struggles and all them endless nights my mother sat in that chair in the hospital and fell asleep. I looked at my friends and my classrooms of students that came to visit me. Even though some of them, all of them was very supportive, I felt like the fact that they believed in me enough to support me to come to the hospital. I had friends where, like I said, before I got shot, the ADA wasn't even enacted yet, the American Disability Act. So there were steps to go to the school. 4 of my classmates would carry me upstairs to my classes. When I went to high school and we would get on the trains, like the trains with the L's with all the steps. They would carry me up and down the steps. When I went to college, my same friend, Bonnie, who's in the book, would carry me up and down these steps. So I really didn't need a ramp. I really didn't need ADA. You know, I learned how to go up and down steps myself. I learned how to be so independent because I felt like that independence gave me control. When I started driving and I saw this guy driving this car one day with hand controls, and I asked him, how you drive? And when he told me, I figured out how to do that. I realized my life has to become not what I can't do, but what I can do and how can I do it. I think what drives me is society, you know, putting this stamp on people with disabilities where you can't do this, you can't do that. And like I said, it's never for me. I do things that breaks that stereotype, breaks that barrier, breaks that belief in what able-bodied people feel like people can't do. And to have somebody label me as disabled, I must show you how able I am. So that's really why I drive so hard. And I try to do things that's challenging people who's walking. So when I go to the older place in Brooklyn where they do rock climbing, and I look down from the top of the wall at the people that's walking just to let them know I'm here too, you know. So when I go water skiing, they have like adaptive water skiing, and I post that on my Instagram page, and there's people who are afraid to get in water, people who don't even try to swim, and I can't swim. You know, I used to could swim before the accident, but the fact that I tell somebody, when somebody asks me, what you doing today, Jeff? I say, I'm going water skiing. And they said, no, I asked you what you doing. I said, and I told you, right? Or I may pull up to my son's school, and he's like, oh, my dad is coming to get me, and I come in my slingshot. They like, oh, that's your father? And he's like, I thought you said he was in a wheelchair. He said he is. He left the chair home, right? So,
for that.
Right, exactly. And I remember times where I picked my son up from school, and I'm driving him and his friends home, and they like tapping each other like, I thought he said his father was in a wheelchair. How he driving the car?
Liar.
So they like, how you drive the car? And then he said, ask him. You know, he talked to you. He's normal. Why y'all treat him? Y'all ain't got to dance around him. Ask him whatever you want to ask him. He's an open book. I open my life to the world through my book because I had all this stuff inside. Like these questions y'all asking me, what drives you? What motivates you? I think not only people that have disabilities, but people who deal with challenges in their life, whatever it may be. The difference with someone with a disability is you can see the physical damage. I can't see the internal damage with the guests that's here today because I know there's a story in each one of y'all. But what that story is something you may deal with, and everybody's not comfortable talking about it. I kept my story to myself for 40-some years. I felt like, how can I change the narrative? How can I change the way people vision people with disabilities? So not only did I want to do it while I was living, but I want this book to be a legacy that goes on. And for that person who's recently in this dark space and can't find themselves in that light at the end of the tunnel, I want to be that person. I want to be that read. I want to be whatever way I can touch this person's life to bring them back to what's normal for them. People say to me, like, you do things where my immediate friends that's around me every day don't even know I'm in a wheelchair. They say, Jeff, I forget you in the wheelchair sometime because they never treated me like I was in a wheelchair. And I think that was another turning point for me when I came home, where I remember the first time one of my friends, Lamar, that was in the book, he says, Jeff, we going to a party at 8 o'clock tonight. I said, who going to a party at 8 o'clock? I'm not going to no party at 8 o'clock. He's like, we going and you going.
Are you enjoying the conversation? Please like and subscribe to our channel. Be sure to hit the bell for notifications and be the first to know when new episodes drop. Do you have any nuggets of wisdom to share? We'd love to hear from you on the nuggets you've learned. Please comment below.
Lamar, I'm in a wheelchair. I can't go to no party. He's like, I'm coming to get you at 8 o'clock, so if you don't want to look crazy, get dressed and be ready. He said, either way you going. So we get to the party, and the party's like up 5 flights of stairs. So I'm like, see, I'm going to just go home because he said, look, grab the chair. He carried me, we take me upstairs, we get to the party. I'm in the party, and before you get there, you thinking, like, people gonna bother me, people gonna be staring at me. And it was crazy because everybody was like fascinated with the fact that I was there. I was dressed like everybody else, I had all the latest little outfits on, and I just felt like, wow, I'm back. And then I remember my school had like a dance I went to Cardinal Hayes High School, and they had like this big dance where the girls' school Aquinas came to the dance. So I kind of realized I started having a little privileges with the wheelchair because it was like this tunnel, like how a stadium is and, a concert stadium, and they brought me through this tunnel. I like to dress, so I had a nice little outfit on. I went and bought something for the party, and my friends, it's like 4 or 5 of them. I have my little entourage. We come through the tunnel, and it's like all eyes on us. And I started taking that staring because I'm in a wheelchair to like, I'm the celebrity in the wheelchair. It was interesting because I did an interview one time for that New York Times article, and they asked my brother, how did you feel, your brother in a wheelchair and you had to push him around? He said, I know you're recording this and I want to be real honest. I was ashamed to push that chair because I was 14, he was 13. People stared at us, and I just didn't think it was cool to have a brother in a wheelchair. He said, but I'm going to tell you, after a while, I was fighting to push the chair because he became like the celebrity in the wheelchair. He said, so, it's like we start having parties and he would tell me to put Jeff in the wheelchair on a flyer. And I'm like, Jeff in the wheelchair? He's like, yeah, that's what I want on the flyer. Because when people would say, Jeff, they would say, Jeff who? They say, Jeff in the wheelchair. So people say, why would you put that on a flyer? I said, because my wheelchair is a part of me. It carries me everywhere I go. If I'm going to represent Jeff, I want my chair represented too. So this is who I am, So I started embracing the chair. It was like the Grammy for me for all these challenges I've been through, Then people, say like, with all the scars from the surgeries and things like that, where, you can do all type of cosmetic surgery now. But I want my scars because these are the scars that saved my life, so I don't look at it when I'm undressed and I see these scars and the cuts in my back from them removing a bullet. I look at all these scars as these are a part of me that saved my life. So I embrace everything around me that helped me be who I am.
I know that's right.
Yeah.
We know that there's a ton that you've made, that you are making to address the population that you represent. And you represent them so well, and you help people who have disabilities to be seen and to feel valued and to stay fresh.
Yes.
Right? So can you share a little bit about that? And I guess, again, I'm thinking about children too. Like, you are a wonderful example for children who might be in a similar situation as yourself, who might feel like they don't really have the language or they haven't gathered their feelings as to how to embrace their challenges. So, like, what messages do you have?
I like, when I first started making clothes, I had this hoodies that I was making, and it had J. Lorenzo on it, which is, Lorenzo is my middle name, and the J from Jeff. When I initially made it, and it said J. Lorenzo on it, and I put the hoodie out, and I started selling them. The next time when I went to make the next batch of hoodies, I told them, I said, look, take that O and Lorenzo and make it a wheelchair. And I changed the logo and put the wheelchair in it because I wanted something to identify the fact that I don't ever want to deny my wheelchair. So I put the wheelchair logo on, and I want a wheelchair on the hood. So when I put the wheelchair hoodie out, everybody that bought the one without it asked me for the one with it. They was like, why you ain't selling me that one? They said, what made you do that? I went to a fashion show for people with disabilities. When I got to the show, I had the hoodie on. One of the kids said, can I wear your hoodie in the show? So I said, I thought about it. I had about 20 of them in the car. So I went back to the car, and the lady said, would you do the show for us? I said, okay. So I took 10 of the kids, put the hoodies on them and my sneakers, and inside the sneaker, they had a motivational quote in each one of them. So all the kids read the quotes inside the sneakers. If you ever think about giving up, remember why you started, was one of the quotes. When they came out on the runway to the audience with my hoodies on, and I'm sitting there watching their faces, when I saw how proud they were, how happy they was, how good this made them feel, it just took me into like, I have another lane, I have another purpose. I have to do something for this, the people with disabilities, because I felt like I made it. I got back to some type of normalcy. I got society to accept me the way I was. I want them to be who you are. Don't ever feel like you have to deny who you really are. The end of the show, they said, well, we want to introduce the designer. and he's also in a wheelchair. And I rolled out, and it was like a moment where to see all of these kids, like, I got on Jay Lorenzo. It felt like when I was little saying I got on Gucci or I got on Prada,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So to be the person to design it, and it wasn't just the design or just the hoodie, it was just the fact that, once again, I'm feeling like it's not about me. It's about the people and the lives that I change. Starting with kids is so important. Like, one of my next projects is gonna be to do a children's book, you know, because I think with like cosmetic surgery, women getting their bodies done, things like that, a lot of that is insecurities. A lot of that is people feeling like they have to, you know, like, your body has become a uniform and everybody feels like I gotta look like everybody else. I wanna look the way I am, and I want to be the way I am. And like I tell people all the time, if I can't be happy with what I see in the mirror, how can I expect you to love me and be happy for me? You know, so I just try to look in that mirror and accept me as I am and make the best person that I am, because this is how God made me.
Look at that.
All I know is you rock climbing. I tried it for a little bit last year. I
So
barely
you know
made it
how
3
hard
feet.
it is.
I barely made it 3 feet. So, yeah, you definitely inspired me. I'm gonna try it again though.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about your sneakers? I
Oh,
mean, to walk with
yeah,
a message
yeah.
like that. I think that is so exciting, and they, you know, the sneakers do more than just support the feet. Talk to us about
Yeah.
them.
So this is the sneakers, and it's a magnetic box. And I wanted the magnetic box for people who have problems with their hands. They could open the box easily. And this is one of the sneakers.
Nice.
I have the J. Lorenzo logo on the side of the sneaker. Each one of the sneakers has a motivational quote. And the reason why I designed these sneakers, I wanted something that was affiliated with walking, because walking is so important to me. But not only that, your mindset is what controls whatever challenges you deal with in life. I wanted to be able to be in somebody's house every morning. They put these sneakers on and give them an inspirational quote just to help them start their day positive, because I feel like if you're thinking positive when you start your day, the rest of your day will be positive.
Don't count the days, make the days
Count. Right?
Yeah,
That's
don't
a
count
word.
the days,
That's a
make the days
word.
count. I like that.
That's
And
a
that-
nugget. That is a nugget.
That quote is important to me because there's 24 hours in a day, and people always ask me, Jeff, how do you do all the things you do? I said, it all depends on how you spend your 24 hours, and that's the results of your day. Like, people work 24 hours and they get paid for 24 hours. So I always ask my son, what did you do in your 24 hours? Because if your 24 hours wasn't productive, then that's why your day wasn't productive.
I would love to hear a little bit more about your son. Do we have time?
Y'all ready?
Yeah, we're
Oh,
ready.
okay.
Yeah.
I think having my son naturally was like, when you mentioned the rebirth, right? It was almost like it gave me my identity back. It gave me my life back. It made me feel like Jeff again. To be able to do something that originally I'm thinking, you know, I won't ever be able to have a family. I won't be able to do what most people thrive to do. You know, everybody wants, like, most men say, oh, I want a son. You know, I need that junior, you know. So I remember the day I got a phone call from his mom saying that, you know, she was at the doctor, so I thought something happened. And I get to the doctor, she was like, Jeff, I need you to come here right away. I get to the doctor office, they're looking at a sonogram. I'm
Wow.
like, wait a minute. So I was like, what is that? And she's like, the doctor's like, we have great news, you're gonna be a dad. I said,
Wow.
I'm gonna be a dad?
Yeah.
Like, whoa. I'm not an emotional person, and I probably haven't cried since those 30 days I was crying, which is strange. Like, people think I'm not normal because, you know, I still deal with tragedies in life, but I'm not a crier. I think I've been broken so much till I don't have tears anymore. And I'm looking at this screen wondering, like, how am I gonna be a dad? Like, how do you do this in a wheelchair? I think originally, you know, when I first got shot, I asked my mother one day, like, can I have kids? And she's like, you gotta ask the doctor, I don't know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I asked the doctor, and he's like, yeah, you know, the sperm count, everything is still the same, you know. When I first tried to be intimate with a woman, like, that was another one of those challenges where I felt like, how do you do this? And I remember the first time it was real awkward and very uncomfortable for me because I pretty much just laid there because I didn't know what to do. I really didn't know how to do it again. You know, it was something, you know, and being a man, it felt, you just feel less than because it's like, wow, I can't perform. I can't, like, I just didn't know how to do it. You know, like, it's no way to camouflage it. I really didn't know what I was doing. So I laid there, and I remember her saying, like, afterwards, like, you got to stop being lazy. You got to, and I'm like, and I think that motivation and driving me with everything else, if you put me up to a challenge, and I think not only was my ego shattered, but the fact that she said that to me, it just motivated me to, like, I got to figure this out, you know, and she was like, you're going to have to learn how to get on top. And I'm like, wow. And I was pretty strong upper body wise, and I tried it, you know, after time I practiced. Then I figured out ways where, like, I could lay on her legs and kind of get leverage, you know, so I would be able to perform. And it was like one of those groundbreaking things for, like, almost like a new discovery for people with disabilities, because I actually have 3 copies of this book, and I have a red copy and a black copy.
Yeah, notice that.
And the red copy, I took it out for the schools and the church. But in that black copy, it's basically describing what I'm talking about. I felt compelled to put it in the book because we aren't represented in intimacy and sexuality and stuff like that. And I want that to be something that people are aware of because it's not what you think it is. You know, me being able to perform sexually again and to please a woman was like really big for me. You know, super big because, you know, it was ego, it was just feeling normal, just wanting to do what everybody else does and just being able to have a family. And to sit there in front of a sonogram after the fact, I felt like I got the assignment.
By the way,
Tell me to be strong. Tell me take control again.
Exactly.
I got this one.
Exactly.
Are you ready for number 7?
Right.
Let's go.
by the way, hearing about your first time being awkward does not sound atypical from what I've heard.
Yes.
That's really important, though. I mean,
So,
that's representation right there.
And I mean, I have friends who are paralyzed from the neck down who's also sexually active. And people count us out in so many different arenas is why. It's a topic people don't like to talk about, but I always feel like the things that's uncomfortable to talk about is really the most important, because the more education we give, the more people understand our situations and that we just want to do what everybody else is doing. We want a fair shot at being normal as possible. I think it's really good when people ask questions that they're not sure about or they want to know, because rather than count me out, let me explain it to you. Let me show you how I do it. And it's almost like cooking. Everybody got a different ingredient, and it's what your taste buds require. You know, it's like when you give people with disabilities the opportunities, we've been put on a back burner so much till it's like an honor for us to go to work. My coworkers would call me in the morning to see if I was coming to work because it was a blizzard outside. I would deliberately go to work in a blizzard just because I want them to see that I go that extra mile. In real life, I don't let nothing stop me, you know, so if it's a blizzard, I'm showing up. I did it to motivate the people that was walking, to let them know, stop making excuses, because I don't live by excuses. So there's a will, there's a way, so I'm showing up.
That sounded like a rap bar. There's a blizzard, I'm showing up.
That's it.
Jeff, you have given us so much food for thought to chew on.
Thank you.
It is crystal clear that you are a motivational speaker. I personally am very motivated by meeting
Thank
you.
I just
Thank
know I
you.
got to go hit the gym. So for real. I just
Right,
right. Man, what am I not doing right now? I got to go hit the gym.
Get that body right.
Get that body right.
Yeah, man.
You know, I mean, your whole life experience is a lesson. If you had to sum that up, like, what do you think that lesson your whole life is?
I think, honestly, the drive and motivation is in everybody. I feel like you have to lose something to find it. Unfortunately, when we are down and out, like, even if you do an analogy of being broke, you lose your job, you learn how to budget. When you have your job, the more you have, the less you are motivated. So I feel like sometimes you have to take away in order to see how good you really are at what you can be. Unfortunately, I had to lose my legs to get that type of motivation. But I think there are people who, with a disability or without, have a lot of drive and determination. But if you look at a lot of success stories, they come from tragic backgrounds. You look at Oprah, you look at different people, and they have these tragedies in their life. You know, you look at kids who grew up with parents that was on drugs, and they supersede because of how many things they didn't have, how much they lacked is what makes them so productive. Even though I was productive and I was on that productive track, I think losing my legs strengthened my mind because my force is in my head. When you really think about it, most of our power is mental. It's all in our head, because if I take your head off your shoulders, even if you work out, your body is useless. Even people who don't think properly, you know, who don't align their goals and what's your vision. Most people live for other people. They don't really live for their purpose and what they think is important. It's always, well, what are my friends gonna think? How my friends gonna feel about that? You know, if I dated you and then you gotta explain to your friends he's in a wheelchair, but then it's like, well, my boyfriend's in a wheelchair, everybody else's boyfriend is walking, so am I gonna feel funny? Do I feel less than? But what happens when your boyfriend show up and he's water skiing, climbing rocks, writing books, you know? Now it's like, oh, that's your boyfriend? So you have to embrace who you are, what you deal with, and things you surround yourself with without always feeling like you're less than because you have something that other people don't have, where I can't walk. But when I show up and I come to the table, I'm bringing everything that's needed. I'm not sitting at the table feeling like I'm the weakest link at any table.
In a way, you know, having a disability is your superpower.
Yes, definitely.
It sounds like it.
It definitely does.
Sure.
It makes you think out the box, because even at work, if you think about it, any job you do or anything that you do productive, you have to challenge yourself. It's going to challenge you. Like, I'm great at problem solving because I already think out the box, and I think out the box for everyday needs. Like, it was interesting. One morning I was going to work. I live on the 27th floor. I'm at the top of the building. So I come out, the elevator, they took the elevators out of service for maintenance. They's like, well, the elevator be back on in an hour. I'm like, it's 8 o'clock, I gotta go to work. So 3 guys walk out their apartment and they like, oh, the elevator's broke? Dang. All right, have a good day. And they walk down the steps and leave me, right? The next guy comes out, I said, and I'm sitting there, he pushes the button, I said, oh, the elevator broke. He's like, oh man, he's aggravated. He goes down the steps. It's 2 staircases. He goes down this staircase. I go to the other staircase, go down the steps. That's the picture that's in the back of the book where I'm sitting at the top of the steps. I go down the steps, meet him in the lobby. He comes out the door in the lobby and he's like, and that's what I call that wheelchair moment, right? Like, whoa. It's things like that. I could have went back in the house, worked from home that day, took the easy way out, but I always like the challenge, because the challenge, it takes me to that next level. I think in life we're on a ladder, and no matter how many steps you take up and no matter how successful you become, you got to take that next step, because it's not about you. It's about the people that's looking at you, the people that admires you. And like when we talk about like a superhero in a wheelchair, if I'm that superhero, I always have to go that extra mile so I can set the bar higher. So everybody that's following me, everybody that's watching me know, don't ever get comfortable, don't ever be satisfied, and you'll keep growing. Yeah.
That's powerful. I like that.
Jeff, we cannot thank you enough for
Thank
spending
you.
time with us today and having us have so many notes to take and walk away with.
Front and back.
Right. So if you had to leave one final nugget,
Because there's a lot.
right, on the table for our audience, I guess what would be your golden nugget? What would be the final nugget you leave on the table for our audience?
The best nugget you could give would be, if you ever think about giving up, remember why you started. Because the drive and determination you have when you start a project is really what drives you, what motivates you. I'm going to do it. As you get into the project and start facing challenges in life, you start giving up because you forget why you started. So I think it's super important to always remember why you started. Even like with college and school, you start all these things, and my message to anybody, whatever you start, finish it. Don't get distracted. Don't feel like I can't do it. And always tell yourself, how can I, and not I can't.
Before we let you go, tell the audience where they can find you, follow you, and other projects that you have in the works.
I can be reached on Instagram at Shoes by J. Lorenzo. And to purchase the book, My Feet Are Off the Ground, you can go to myfeetareofftheground.bigcartel.com.
So we'll just thank you again for coming in and just blessing us with so many
Thank you.
nuggets.
Absolutely.
We hope you'll come back.
Yeah, definitely. I look forward to it.
Awesome. That's
All right.
our show.
Thanks for watching the latest episode of The Nugget. Please like and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell for notifications to know when new episodes drop. Do you have any nuggets of wisdom to share? At The Nugget, we're all about fostering conversation. So please jump in the comments section and share your wisdom with us.